Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. First things first, before we get to our article, Virginia Roberts has come out and said that the threat against her life is not credible. The FBI investigated it, and they came to the conclusion that it was not credible and just some Looney Tune, which is a great thing. We don't ever want to hear anyone being threatened, especially, someone like Virginia Roberts who has been through what she's been through. It just makes you wonder what sort of psycho would try and threaten her. What's wrong with people? Our actual article today, though, is from The Guardian, and it's an interview with Emily Maitlis, and it's pretty much a rundown on what went on the night of the Andrew interview, kind of like what she thought about it, etc., etc. So we're going to jump into that article in a second here, but I think that it'll add a little bit more context, and you all know how much I love context on this podcast. It's the most important thing for us to see the whole story, right? You could just see a paragraph of something and say, oh my God, this is bad. This is so bad for somebody. But when you look at it in context, it might not be as bad. Well, this stuff, when we see all of this in context, it just makes everything look so bad. A lot of this stuff on its own, it would just be, oh, that's weird. These people are a little weird. But when you add everything together that we have learned, everything that has been published in the news, and if you're following the case and you add all of this stuff up together, there is no way you can come to any other conclusion besides that this was absolutely and positively planned out for years, this whole entire operation that they were involved in. This wasn't like something that just popped up and they were like, all right, yeah, we're gonna traffic some young girls. Nah, this was a plan set into motion by someone. And the question remains, who is that someone? Who are the handlers? Who are the people that came up with the idea? And I have to tell you, the more I read about this and the more I really dive deep into the Maxwell family and Ghislaine Maxwell, the more I think that she might have been the mastermind behind all of this. She might have been the one that really, really, really got this ball rolling. Now, that's not to say that she's any more or less responsible than Jeffrey Epstein, but I think that Ghislaine Maxwell truly is the linchpin of this whole entire thing. I think everything that Epstein knew, Maxwell knows. And the fact that she's not in jail right now, or not at the very least being questioned by the best investigators money can buy, is just, it's a pox on Western civilization as a whole. All right, folks, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. Let's hop into this article. The article is from The Guardian. The headline, Emily Maitlis, Prince Andrew was unleashed. He wanted to tell me everything. As in life, so with television, timing is everything. Had The Crown aired its new series 1 week earlier, had the fictional queen been spotted squirming at the TV crews in her midst, had the distant memories of a now-banned palace interview been fresher in our minds, it is entirely possible and more than probable that the Prince Andrew interview would never have happened. So, because of a TV show, they wouldn't have run the interview. If that's what they're relying on, the royal house is in a lot of trouble, because I could have told them that they shouldn't have Andrew do that interview. It's pretty obvious to anyone who's paying attention that the dude's a dullard. The dude is an absolute, positively stupid buffoon. You're going to put him in front of a camera, in front of a seasoned investigative journalist like Emily Maitlis, and not think he's not going to get just eviscerated? Come on, man. This is the discussion in the Newsnight office a couple of weeks after it aired. We still cannot quite believe it happened. We have to pinch ourselves seeing global headlines day after day, the ramifications of all the painstaking observations he made to us in that hour of surreal television. I agreed to do an interview about the interview with the German magazine Der Spiegel. Was this your Frost-Nixon moment? They asked as I walked in. I had barely taken off my coat. I gulped. It felt like the finest thing I have ever been asked, but I couldn't find a way to respond without sounding like a muppet. They watched every frame. They could tell me the time of the clock hands in the opening shot. What about his tie? They asked. Why was a member of the family of Windsor unable to tie a correct Windsor knot? That's pretty brutal. This guy can't even tie a Windsor knot? I mean, are you kidding me right now? Why would they even let this guy be involved in anything in public life? He's such a buffoon. I was stumped. I realized they had pored over the interview more intensely than me, one finger permanently on pause and rewind. People have asked what I was thinking as I sat there opposite the prince, preparing for the questions to come. How do you make small talk? How do you compose the tone you need for the hour ahead? My overriding emotion was relief. I expected the interview to be pulled at every stage. It had been months in the making and got signed off on just 48 hours earlier. Even then, it was pushed back by a couple of hours, then brought forward by one. My fear was that any sign of procrastination, any shifting of the timetable, would ultimately end in cancellation. So I mainly felt joy we had got this far. The weight of expectation was second to that. No one knew the interview was coming. There had been no publicity. Indeed, the whole event had been kept intensely private. And that's true. They just, kind of launched this interview at us at one point. Okay, we're having this interview. They kept it real close to the vest, and I think that's pretty cool that they did that because it was a surprise to everybody. And secondly, hopefully what it did is it sparked even more interest in the case, right? And that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for this case to be on the front burner. We don't want it on the back burner. We're not looking to have it in a storage room. We want it right there for everybody to see. And when you have people like Prince Andrew who is involved in this stuff, well, you can use that to hit people over the head like a cudgel with so they'll wake up. If this prince can be involved, everybody can be involved. The prince put me at ease. Chatty, relaxed. He showed us the end of the room where they kept the projector. It was turned into a cinema every Thursday evening for the palace staff. As we adjusted our seated positions for the photos, he asked if I had ever been interviewed by David Frost. It was not calculated to shock me, but it did. In his eyes, Frost is the Sunday morning telehost thrower of excellent parties. But in my head, Frost is the arsonist in chief of Frost Nixon fame. I wonder if he caught my look of alarm at the mention of the name. I am always impressed by interviewers who can do the whole thing without notes. I can't. I need reminders on my knee, dates, first names, quotes in bold text. I am addicted to the highlighter pen. My paper is generally a garish mix of type biro, unreadable scribble, and lashings of luminosity, as if they belong to the unhinged. It has to be something that catches my eye in a moment of amnesia or panic. Over the years, I have practiced how to lift an entire sentence with a brief glance down while trying to hold the gaze of whomever I'm talking to. It is the little things that throw me. The wrong pen, the wrong font. An interview done standing up is a disaster. I need my knees to rest notes on. It is these weird superstitions that can make or break your confidence in those moments before the cameras start rolling. The interview itself, perhaps bizarrely, is the easiest bit. He's there. I'm there. The prep is done. We had role-played the interview to prepare. We had imagined scenarios and responses, evasions and deviations. Do I have to say sir after each question, I pondered? My editor, Esme Wren, gave me a gentle look, as if I had gone slightly mad. You are courteous and firm. This is a Newsnight interview, not a royal encounter. It was her focused, steely, inquiring look I found myself channeling each time nerves deserted me. Now remember, folks, for us Americans, we're sitting here and we're like, okay, so you had an interview with somebody. What's the big deal? This isn't just an interview with somebody over in England. This is a prince, a blood royal prince. This is a big deal over in England, and we might think it's silly here, and, okay, I agree that it is silly. But for somebody like Emily Maitlis, who grew up in England, and, you have the royal family is always, something you learn about from a child. Obviously, you know who they are, you know what they are, you know what their relationship with the people is, blah, blah, blah. And for a girl to get to have an interview with Prince Andrew, it has to be pretty, a bit of a little bit scary almost, right? This is a big deal. This can make or break your whole life being with a royal. If you ruined a royal back in the day, forget it. You'd be destroyed. But now, well, Emily Maitlis did a great job in this interview. Remember, at first I was kind of hesitant. I really didn't know her work. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know what she was about. Well, that's all gone by the wayside because she is just absolutely positively, she did a great job with this interview. We began to record. I thought about how reasonable he sounded. He was explaining why Jeffrey Epstein was never really his friend, more of a friend of a friend. For one moment, I imagined I had got everything wrong, misunderstood the story entirely. But I stuck to the line of questioning, and it paid off. Does he regret the visit to stay with Epstein? Yes. Does he regret the whole friendship? It was around 16 minutes into the interview, and it was the answer that, for me, changed everything. Still not, he said, and told me of the opportunities he was given by Epstein that were actually very useful. It was such a candid admission, such a bald refusal to play the game with any wider apology or regret. It would become the pivotal moment of the entire hour. This is a man, a prince, who did not come to repent. He came to earn back his right to tell the story his way. Folks, that's what I said right from the beginning about Prince Andrew in this interview, right? It was all about public relations. That's all he cared about. He wanted to fix his public relations look. He wanted to make sure everything was good. He wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to suffer any sort of repercussions. Well, wrong. Emily Maitlis completely hammered him. Emily Maitlis completely made him look like a fool. And I could not be happier that someone like her was the one who did this interview. Once I understood that, everything else flowed from there. Andrew was unleashed, unstoppable. After a decade of silent frustration, he wanted to tell me everything. He paused being a royal and found his voice. Yeah, I bet he didn't. I wonder if he wished he lost his voice instead of the whole sweating situation over in the Falklands. That would have been nice. Maybe he had some laryngitis. Maybe his brother could have just broken his jaw real quick, hit him with a nice three-piece, because that would have done the whole royal family a whole lot better, because what he did is he really stepped in it with this interview. He really stepped in it. The bumbling fool, the dotard, the George Bush Jr. of the Windsor clan really stepped in it. He told me things he had no need to reveal, about his sweat problems and his trip to Woking, about his knowledge of Belgravia homes and London night spots. I do not need to tell you the rest. The interview, the memes, the Pizza Express reviews, my single and inadvertent contribution to youth culture. And after the allotted 45 minutes, we stopped. The prince was still charming and even more relaxed. He took me off down the marble hall. We chatted about the famous king's speech, and he pointed out the minister's staircase, which the prime minister ascends each week to meet the queen. We ended on good terms. He had been generous with his time. We may even, now I think about it, have pulled away first. And then we bundled into a black cab back to the office. The interview was ours. Tiny computer memory cards wrapped snug in a folded old envelope. A curious clash of the digital and the deeply analog. Our producer, Jake, clutched them to his chest. We were sworn to silence for another 12 hours, the recording itself under literal lock and key, until the rollout began the next morning. This is such a great inside, behind-the-scenes look at what went on in this interview. This is a very, very informative article for people that want to know what a journalist feels like and what it's like to perform one of these interviews. This is a career-changing interview for Emily Maitlis. No matter what happens in the rest of her career, she was the one that exposed Prince Andrew. She was the one that put him on blast. She was the one to get him really on the record for the first time about any of this. It has taken 3 weeks for my shoulders to finally drop. 3 weeks to absorb that the interview we did that day may yet have the power to change the lives of Epstein's victims. Bang! And that's exactly what I said. All these people that are talking about this is never going to go nowhere. No one's ever going to get arrested. But the statute of limitation. None of that matters at this point. None of that matters at this point. If the pressure is on so heavy and so deeply that it is impossible for me to believe that there is not going to be any more movement. It's not just going to be those 2 prison guards arrested. I have a funny feeling we're going to see a lot more movement real soon. I don't have any inside information on that, by the way. It's a gut feeling that things are going to start breaking in this case in the new year. 3 weeks of headlines and blanket coverage. 3 weeks to realize that questions about the clock and the tie knot and the meaning of a glance or a gesture will continue and ultimately overtake us. What began with a plan, a hunch, and a Newsnight huddle now has a life of its own. It is no longer ours. It belongs somewhere bigger. That is absolutely right. It belongs to everybody who is in this fight. Every one of us who are in the trenches. Every single person who has stood up and said, "God damn it, no more. We will not accept this from the people who are supposed to rule over us. We will not accept this from politicians. We will not accept this from royals. We will not accept this from anybody." Enough is enough, folks. Enough is enough. All right, folks, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. And if you would like to support the show, you can click on the GoFundMe link. That'll be in the description box. I will be back later on this afternoon with an evolution episode. And of course, we'll be back for our daily drop tonight. Hope everybody has an amazing day. I'm headed out to do a little bit of Christmas shopping with my girlfriend. And I hope that you guys all have a fantastic afternoon.